The very first time that I heard about the Dell XPS 13 2-in-1, I got high hopes. The first time that I've seen it on a press event, these kind of hopes got confirmed. But after my first impressions video, my opinion was very positive so far. But now after using it for a lot longer and having all my final conclusions done, how good is it? And just as a pointer, this video could get longer than my usual laptop review, which means yes, it will be very positive. So let's start off with the first thing, design and build quality. It is super nice and compact, very thin. Actually, I have to say though, it feels a little bit heavier than it is, but it is below 1.2 kilograms and all is done so nicely. We have the rubberized feet, we have the very solid build quality, it is thin, it is very versatile obviously, because I don't really have to get into all the modes just yet because I want to take care of the ports. Because what we have here is Thunderbolt 3, we have the headphone jack and today in my opinion not really necessary battery status LEDs, one of the two speakers with the second one being here. Then we have the power button, we have the micro SD card slot, Thunderbolt 3 once again with the lock. Unfortunately though, no volume rocker, because if you are in tablet mode you can't really adjust the volume, which is a little bit sad to see. But just in terms of design and build quality, it couldn't possibly be done any better because it feels so sturdy. And if we open it up, which I have to say is not that easy because it's so thin, it doesn't really have anything to hold on to it, we will see the next thing. A very sturdy, solid hinge, and it is, in my opinion, also very nice and wobble-free because, yes, it does wobble a little bit, but in normal tablet use, this is really nicely done. If we take a look at the inside now at the keyboard, the material here with the carbon fiber gets a little bit smudged up quite quickly, so maybe not the best choice, but it definitely feels nice. We have a fingerprint reader that I will show off in just a few seconds. This one works really nice, I have to say. But about the keyboard, the first thing. I was never a big fan of Dell XPS 13 keyboards because they felt too shallow and kind of dead to me, and maybe they improved it a little bit at this time, but I still think pretty much about the same because yes, I can type on it absolutely nicely without any bigger problems. It is quiet and we have maybe a little bit more travel now, but the hard bottoming out and the little bit of too low of resistance still makes it feel a little bit dead to me. The typing experience is, I would say, acceptable after a while, but in my opinion it will never get great, and especially from a company that makes Dell Latitude keyboards, which I've seen in almost the same thickness already. I don't get why this is still a thing, but otherwise we have the cursor buttons that I also don't like with the page up and down. I think they should have gotten rid of that and just left the cursor as it is because it's just more convenient, because I hit the page up and down way too often. But I don't want to complain here too much. We have still good things though, because we have the volume control here, as I said, not though on the sides with a volume rocker. You can of course change the brightness. We have two levels of backlight, which is absolutely more than fine enough. And if you go into the BIOS, you can actually set how long this light is on after you've touched anything. And this is great. One thing that I would have also wished to have seen though is a direct brightness control here up there, and not here where you have to press the function key. But don't want to get any further into that. The trackpad, in my opinion, has a nice texture. It's not too sticky, not too grippy. Size is maybe a little bit small, but to me it feels a little bit sluggish, especially during scrolling in Chrome. It felt too slow. And yes, I know on the Dell XPS 13 review that I did, people said you can just tweak that. And yes, I tried that, but no matter what I do, it never feels natural like on the Dell Latitudes or on any other brand's keyboard or trackpad. So this is a little bit weird to see after all. Now, let's check the fingerprint reader. As you can see, this one works really, really nice and fast. Almost as good as on a phone. But I would say let's use one of the modes now and get into what I would actually like to call the tablet mode, because this is how I use tablet mode. I put it on my laps and then I hold on to this like it would be a tablet and use it like this. So this mode is really nice, and I use the tent mode, for example, in the kitchen. And a little bit of a sorry right now here already, before I'm going to talk about the display, is that the camera will, and that is something you will see, pick up some odd moire effects. The first thing that I want to go into if we talk about the display, I just got a Spider 5 Pro and I calibrated this. And this is the calibration now out of the box. Nothing has changed. And this, as you can see, is after the calibration. So you see colors get a little bit darker and everything else, and the color gets a little bit warmer, but I want to back that up with some numbers. So let's get into that. Okay. The first thing, just let us quickly check the brightness here, because, and some other things like the, as you can see, from 0 to 100, it goes up to 430 in terms of brightness, which is really bright already, and still maintains a good contrast with 1160 to 1. But as you can see, the white point at 7100 is definitely on the colder side. It didn't really bother me, and the black level is still good, but usually I use it at about 30 to 40%, which means we have still a good amount of brightness, and the black levels are great with a great contrast. So top job in my opinion here. Now if we get into the next thing, as you can see here, we have 90% of sRGB, but maybe just 77%, and you can see this moire effect. This is just my cam, don't bother about it too much. But only maybe 77% of Adobe RGB, but as you can see, in my opinion, not knowing these values, I had no problem at all. But what you can see is the gamma of 2.2 is the desired one on the blue line, and we are actually quite close to that. So in that regard, I am absolutely happy. But now I want to get into what I think about it subjectively without any numbers. The 1080p glossy display was the best decision that they could have done. Why? I use it with 125% of scaling, which in my opinion doesn't introduce any scaling issues. At 150, I would say those stuff. But the display is still sharp, and due to now being glossy, since of course it is a touch display, it is also way more vibrant, way more vivid, way more clear in my opinion. And this is very important for me, because no useless Quad HD Plus display that you have available here as an option, but I would not recommend that one. The white point out of the box, as I said, a little bit on the colder side, did not really bother me. Black levels still really great, no light bleed, and all that is good. And even out of the box, color still looked fine enough. So with calibration, you can get it even further. You can make it even more so pleasant. But as it is already, it is absolutely great. Of course, viewing angles are stable and all that. I don't think I really have to mention that. So let's close this up for a second and get into the, in my opinion, already next highlight, the sound. As you can already see, we have max waves audio here, and you can of course turn it off and turn it on with some other options, as you can see here, if you want to adjust that. But the pretty much only important thing for me would be the playback, and I will start the video and then turn it on and off just so you can see the actual difference. Okay, I think one thing is obvious. This was, by the way, just with 80%, because I didn't want to go to 100%, because then it's so loud that it would kind of get in trouble with my video, of the audio of my video. But what I have to say here, I'm very happy with the software, because we have options like max bass, detail, and also width of the sound. And with the two side firing speakers, I'm so happy. I'm so impressed by the sound, because it's very loud, and the best thing here, which is not the case on many Dell devices, it is distortion free. It sounds very full, very rich. So this is pretty much, of all the laptops that I've tested, the most pleasing one. I'm not quite sure if it's really the best one, but as far as I remember, especially in the ultrabook segment, it is the very best speaker that I've seen. So absolutely great, and the headphone jack is absolutely solid as well. Don't really want to go too much further into that. So now let's get into the performance, and I want to show off the SSD speeds real quick. 1550 is absolutely okay in terms of reads. Okay, 300 and maybe a write support is not that great, but this is a smaller drive. The bigger one should even better. What is not that great though, a cold boot to the login screen takes about 26 seconds, which is definitely too slow, because most devices by now, especially with an NVMe, can do this under 10 seconds, at around 8 seconds by now, and the average is at 15. So I'm not quite sure what they did here. They definitely should improve this. Now, before I'm going into those values, let's quickly cover performance once again. I don't think I have to really show off anything in terms of performance, because obviously if we go into the browser, which I will do after all right now, you can see that browsing here is absolutely nice, very smooth, very responsive. You can jump in between all the apps absolutely without any problems, and it is a snappy device. But just keep one thing in mind, this is not the normal i5 or i7 dual core. This is after all still the Y series, which is a little bit on the lower end. But the great thing here is, in normal use, text documents and whatever you want to do, browse the web, this is absolutely more than enough that you need. Of course, if you want to try to do some video editing now, I would not recommend it, because yes, it works, but the rendering times will be so slow and the experience is not the greatest, but this device was never meant to do that. Maybe you can do this with the XPS 13, which I also wouldn't recommend, because if I would use Adobe Premiere on a laptop, it would have to have at least a quad-core and even better a discrete graphics card from NVIDIA. But if we have this photo editing and whatever you want to do, I would say absolutely more than enough. And what I personally do with a laptop, this would fit my needs 100% without any problems. But now it is time to talk about the heat, because I can cover noise actually quite quick. It doesn't make any, because it doesn't have a fan. What it does have though is a little bit, a barely audible amount of coil whine, and I actually have to get to my ears, to the keyboard to actually hear it. And in a completely silent room, from normal working distance, with my I have to say, due to my tinnitus, very sensitive ears, I could hear it if I really concentrated. But in normal use, I don't really ever bother about it, so I don't think you should either. Now about the heat. Ambient temperature was at 20 degrees, and in normal use, the whole device at around 27 to 28 degrees is absolutely fine, with 29 on max and the CPU at 30. This is all great. Now then I did a 45 minutes 100 CPU load test. Device bottom got to 32 to 37 with a max of 47 at around this place. Here it's where it gets the warmest. There should be the CPU, I would say. And on the keyboard part, so on the upper hand, we have 30 to 33 and a maximum of 39 at around this place here. Still, in my opinion, absolutely fine. Did not really get warm. Now, a few people could already call this throttling, because the CPU got to 76 degrees, but it didn't actually change in terms of clock speed for me after 45 minutes. It was at 2.2 and it maybe got sometimes down to 2.1. So I've seen other sites saying that it does throttle, and maybe at some point it will. But this, after 45 minutes, which I don't see anyone doing here 100% of CPU load anyways, I would not call throttling in the first place. So we've covered that. I'm very happy with all of that. Now, what about the battery life? Here is what I expected. I hope to get maybe like 5, maybe even 6 hours of screen on time, but that was not the case. But I will tell you what it was before. Just a quick something at first. Charge time to about 2 hours and 45. The weird thing though is that the last percent takes like 40 minutes about. So this is always a thing, and it was quite new. So let's cover that. But now about the battery life, and I want to go into that. Usually the Core M device and Core Y devices weren't known to be efficient, and I did not expect this to get me through the day, but I was hoping to get 5 to 6 hours to be happy enough. But with a brightness of usually switching between 30 and 40%, which is actually brighter than most people already use, because I like them a little bit brighter, I got values from at least 7 hours to actually even 10 hours plus, averaging at least quite easily solid 8, 8.5, and even more so. And this, therefore, at least for me, makes it easily for a 1-day device and actually for a 2-day device in most cases. So I'm actually super surprised that I got such a good battery life out of that. So yes, I call this fantastic battery life. And maybe 7 or 8 hours doesn't sound so much for you, but for my use, with my used brightness, I usually get like at least 30-40% less than most other reviewers. So you could expect maybe even 10-12 hours at an average if it's not me. About the software, don't really have to get too much. I showed Max Audio. Of course, you have RealSense technology with the RealSense camera that you can use, fingerprint and all that, but pretty much otherwise it is fine. You have a lot of Dell software pre-installed, but nothing you should bother about. And that's why I would say let's get to the pros and cons. Super compact. I am so pleased to see this, because this is something that you can carry around and it doesn't feel like it would break, because it feels super sturdy and solid. Versatile design. So let's quickly get the modes out of the way. Of course, you have the closed mode, and that's why I actually don't even get why they call it 2-in-1, because I guess tablet and laptop, but laptop, yes. Then you have the tent mode that I actually use in the kitchen, because then I'm not afraid for it to touch anything that it shouldn't. We have the kind of media mode that I use as a tablet mode, as I said, and then we have the actual tablet mode. So that's way more than 2-in-1 for me. And since it also is nicely done with the stiff hinge, this is greatly done. 1080p glossy display. I've said it already. I'm super happy with that decision. No matte display, which wouldn't have been the case anyway on a touchscreen device, but I would like and I would wish to see this display in the regular Dell XPS 14, because I don't like the matte one. It's dead to me, but I will get to that into a little bit later. but overall the screen super pleasing, great quality, all that. Now we have a loud and distortion free speaker, finally, because usually they distort quite quickly. Not the case here, loud, fully satisfying, top daily use performance. Absolutely, for me, nothing that I would need an i5, i7 dual core for. This Y series performs actually super great for all tasks, and I didn't even notice a difference to any of those. And I had actually an i7 6500 as a comparison right now here at the moment. Fanless and silent, don't really have to get to that. Fantastic battery life and stylus support that I couldn't try, since this is a little bit of an odd decision from Dell, because if you announce a device with a stylus support and show this as a big feature, you should make sure that every tester also gets one. But that's it. Okay, let's get into the negative stuff. And don't worry if you see too much here, because yes, there is a lot, but a lot of that is subjective and to my preferences or not my tastes. But let's get into those. It feels a little bit heavier, because I would have actually expected it to be 1.4. I guess since it's so small and compact and due to metal, it appears to be heavier, but it's not a big issue. Slightly tough to open, something that you will with time get used to, I get. Keyboard for me still feels dead. I just can't get about it. I could get used to it. Typing is okay, but it's just not great. And for everything longer, I would switch to something else. The layout, as I said, is not all that great. No specific backlight, brightness controls. Yeah. Trackpad feels a little bit sluggish, personally, but most people never complain about it on the XPS 14, so it must be just me. Barely audible call button, as I said. Something you should not really bother about, but I wanted to mention it. No volume rocker on the side. I got used to it after a while, but it could have been done. It would have made sense. And then it is awesome, but expensive. Now, let's get here to the crux. I'm going out here on a limb and say that 90-95% of all the buyers, possible buyers, would be actually maybe better off with a Dell XPS 14 laptop. But here is why that's not the case for me. And if I would have to go out today and buy one where my money is not the problem, I would go for this one. Let me explain why. First of all, the biggest reason for me why I never liked the Dell XPS 14, the 1080p matte display. It feels dead, it feels dull, it feels boring to me. It maybe is good for sunlight reliability and all that, but that's not important for me. So I'm happy with this 1080p glossy display, and why I wouldn't go for the Quad HD Plus display that is great is the following. Performance decrease is noticeable and the battery life was completely not that good anymore. So I hope you get the point. The most important factor for me why I would go for this is the display. Of course also the versatility, because I actually used the touchscreen with the tablet function, as I explained, way more than I would have expected. So it actually makes a difference. And for me this would fit better than something like a Surface Pro. Just saying that from my standpoint. The keyboards are pretty much the same, unsatisfying ones, but I can get used to that because I don't see anything other on the market that delivers me such a great speaker, display, build quality, versatility, performance, and battery life. And the only thing that I still have to slightly sacrifice on is the trackpad that I wouldn't use anyway, since I would use rather the touchscreen or a mouse. And the keyboard is not bad after all. So yes, I have to say, the for me kind of deal breaker at the moment is just the pricing, that I don't need a laptop. And in the US, prices are actually way more reasonable, starting at around $1,000, where it starts at around 1,400 euros here, and this version should be close to 2,000. So maybe you could go even on a lower end base, but I would not really go for 4 gigabytes of RAM on the long term, or for the maybe even lower end Y series. So this combination as it is, so as we have seen on the specs, is in my opinion the perfect sweet spot, and I guess that's why they switched off Dell for the reviewers from the Quad HD Plus version to the 1080p version, because this is the version that I would recommend you to get from what I see. Of course, if you need more storage, the 512 gigabyte one. But as I said, if you don't really care about the matte 1080p panel, then for most people the laptop should be the better version, because it offers better value, even more so performance. But I want it to be fanless, I want it to be silent, I want it to be versatile, and I want a great screen. And that's why I, contrary to maybe a few other people, think that this is the better Dell XPS 13. And I've seen a big YouTuber who said the contrary, and I get his argumentation, but for me personally, what I like, this. Yeah, that would have been it. I hope you liked the review. Thumbs up, maybe subscription, and let me know what you think is the better choice. Dell XPS 13, Dell XPS 13 2-in-1, and why. Okay, until next time. Bye. Oh, by the way, one thing I completely forgot to mention in the review, dynamic backlight control. The reason therefore though is that there is a fix now. You can disable it and then it's not a problem. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just check my extended preview because I've talked about it. I don't like dynamic backlight control at all, and I think it's something that should have never existed. It's very annoying and really terrible on this device, but there was a fix already available, a patch where you can disable it, and then everything about this device is fine, and that's why I didn't think it was necessary to be mentioned. So that's it. Okay.